I'm Duarte Sousa, and I'm presenting a paper, Design Implications for Design Implications for Interactive and Analog Technologies Supporting Distance Education, Longitudinal Mixed Method Study during the pandemic. The study was conducted with Pedro, Filipe, Campos, and Vanessa Cesário at Universidade da Madeira. I will start with the introduction, followed by methods, findings, design implications, conclusion, and future work. So, according to UNESCO, compulsory confinement as a response to COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent school closures affected 1.6 billion students worldwide. The United Nations informed that the majority of the affected countries made a swift change in the choice of instructional methodologies from face-to-face to distance education, except 40% of the world's impoverished nations. The 2020 pandemic brought an increased awareness of the importance of ICTs, so certain inequalities were, before the pandemic, partially balanced within the school setting. Information about the pandemic or epidemic's disruption in education is often rare and deficient, but research on effects on weather-related phenomena like Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans may provide insights on the correlation between students' achievement and the time spent without access to physical school environment. There are disagreements on the possible instructional loss that will jeopardize the effort of many decades, especially for the young girls and women. So students who did not receive online instruction may have got no instruction at all due to schools or families' lack of resources. Although the school system and local authorities tried to cope with this process, students and their families were the ones responsible for the learning continuity, despite the lack of access to pertinent resources and knowledge. So in order to understand the complexity of this matter, we applied a mixed method quantitative qualitative procedure. The study consisted of a survey and a set of interviews. So the survey started with 3 surveys to 3 education stakeholders, teachers, students, and parents, by posting each link separately in social media channels in April's 2020 first fortnight. The respondents varied from different ages, school levels, institutions, private and public, and geographical areas. For the interviews, we focused on the 8th grade teachers, students, and parents with children enrolled in the same grade. The convenient and purposeful sample were selected, as well as design thinking extreme user method. The 6 stakeholders were interviewed individually once a week via Zoom or telephone throughout 5 weeks for an estimated period between 13 and 21 minutes each time. So after a 30 interview cycle, we carried out an in-depth qualitative examination using feature coding to assess trends in distance education. It was followed by a cluster analysis that shows various forms of interaction between students and teachers in pink, while parents are isolated on the right corner, as you see. We carried out also a theme analysis that emphasized the assistance collaborative aspect in 3 major themes. So we found out that most of the surveyed teachers agreed that their students were not learning as much as in face-to-face instruction. Also, they saw a quality decrease in students' assignments, driving them to lower their expectations. The teachers felt that they were not fully prepared nor possessed essential training required for distance education, so they resorted to colleagues through email or social media groups. Also, according to teachers, the parents' participation has not increased during school closures. Regarding students, 60% of them say that their interaction with teachers were made mainly through email and social media groups. 80% of students agreed that their doubts were not fully clarified, and they affirmed that the weekly homework plans were initially overwhelming, but it got easier by the time. The parents needed more timely information about the procedures. As a result, 70% relied on social media and social media groups. To mitigate the inability to assist their children, 1/3 of parents joined a social media group to provide better assistance. So from the previous results presented in findings, we can conclude that it is fundamental to understand the shortcomings of school communities to ensure resources equity and estimate all of available digital resources. Schools should increase the resources interactivity in which the user will be notified in a timely manner. Training must be provided to teachers and students in the implemented technological solutions. Education institutions, schools, and governments could aid teachers, students, and parents with consistent and tech support to digital tools. The school community could also be encouraged to make recommendations in an open and participative manner. A class protocol could include 45 minutes of extended classes to promote students' participation, and in the last 15 minutes of class, as well as students' presentation content of homework to validate their synthesis and public speaking. Video conference classes proved to be a matter of intense discussion regarding safety, yet it seems to be the best approach to engage students. A protocol should be established for assigned tasks and homework where a worksheet plan could be sent regularly. Although students' autonomy can be nurtured and promoted, consistent deadlines seems to improve students' responses. Online learning should not overwhelm students, so the amount of homework could be divided into smaller parts with clear objectives and create more engaging learning experiences. Teachers could provide constant feedback so students are aware of their learning process. Regarding communication and collaboration, digitizing pertinent information is preferable to facilitate communication. It is essential to endorse creation of groups among stakeholders on a platform chosen by them with a set of standards and conduct norms. A contact group could be created on a safe and more consensual platform so trust can be built and established in an open line of communication. A cross-communication platform between students from different grades can be created, where the older students could help the younger ones and promote fellowship among students, as well as a positive learning environment. The collaborative element could also be lightened by creating group studies and enhancing the number of group projects. The remote and collaborative nature of interactive digital tools could also be deployed in a teaching community that can answer students' questions on an individual level. A group study can be created and a protocol should be developed in which a provided worksheet could be shared with the students with no technological resources by resorting to postal services. And finally, a pen pal can be assigned to one student or a group of students who can help each other through platforms designed for that purpose. So this study shed a light on the multifaceted and often collaborative coping mechanism of stakeholders when dealing with uncertainty. Yet the stakeholders' adaptation to such circumstances gradually led to a collective understanding of how they could cope with this situation. Despite the innovative technological solutions, we identified some weaknesses, like the lack of support some students face at home once adhering to distance education. Our study concludes that a flexible system that could tackle students' distinct requirements would be needed to face with the above-mentioned issues. So in order to grant a more comprehensive understanding of this matter, future work may encompass more individuals and more extensive groups of stakeholders of different ages, educational, geographic, and cultural backgrounds. Additionally, it would be also beneficial to analyze these subjects' perceptions and experiences on the protocols and methods in the long term and how such examination relates to the study. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, and now we have time for one question. Who wants?
You have performed your study during the COVID, so it's a particular situation. And you plan in the future to continue your study, but the situation will be not any longer the one that you have explored during your work. So I mean, how do you think how we will be able to compare your future studies with the one that you have already done? In other words, also, one may ask, which is the heritage that you think can be brought within the new normality process that are now under development?
I can answer the first question because you could repeat the second part because I didn't understood. Regarding the first question, we always saw the pandemic as it kind of emphasized some of the previous issues, like the students' variability, learning variability that existed before. Certain inequalities existed before. The pandemic kind of enhanced those inequalities. So we plan to study the inequalities that we saw, enhanced inequality that we saw during the study in the pandemic, and how the collective understanding regarding those inequalities still remain in this post-pandemic world. That means, for example, here in Portugal, in Madeira, the government is planning to invest in more ICT training for teachers. So we're trying to understand how would that change their approach, their methodologies. Did I answer your question?
Yes, partially you answered. I don't know if you would like to add something about the heritage that you think could be brought into.
Sorry, the what?
The heritage that derive from COVID-19 that can be brought into the present processes.
Yeah, like I said, we can see, I mean, even in the worst situations, we can see like these positive elements. And I see a positive element in the COVID, which is this awareness of these issues that kind of flew under radar, like these inequalities that we mentioned. We saw that certain schools relied more on ICTs and were prepared for this this event, let's say. In this study, we talked with different schools, private and public schools in rural and urban areas, and we saw that public rural schools were not prepared at all for this event, and students were kind of alone with their parents. So in the future, we need to promote a more equal learning experience throughout the public system, and kind of see these points that we kind of that were emphasized in this period, and tackle those issues.